The woman who destroyed my marriage was sitting in my waiting room. She was holding a copy of her resume. She was hoping I would give her a job. She did not recognize me. Why would she? The last time she saw me, I was the broken wife she had stepped over on her way to my husband. I was crying on a kitchen floor while she waited in a car outside. I was nobody to her, a used-up woman she had beaten. She had no idea that the name on the front of this building, the name of the company she was so desperate to work for, was now mine. Her name was Bella. And in 20 minutes, she was going to walk into my office for her interview, and she was going to look up, and she was going to see my face. I want to tell you the whole story, from the beginning. Because it matters. Because I did not always sit behind a big desk in a corner office. Once, I was the woman on the kitchen floor. And this is how I got up. My name is Eleanor. I am 41 years old. And for 16 years, I was married to a man named David. I met David when we were both young and had nothing. I was 22. I was studying architecture, and I was good at it. Better than good. My professors said I had a gift. I used to stay up all night drawing buildings that did not exist yet, dreaming them into being. I loved it more than anything. I was going to design beautiful things. That was my plan. That was my whole heart. I want you to understand who I was back then, before all of this. I was not a quiet woman. I was not a small woman. I was bright and loud and full of plans. I had a wall in my little student room covered in drawings, and I would stand in front of it at night and point to each one and tell my friends, that one I'll build by the river. That one will have a garden on the roof. That one is the one they'll remember me for. My friends used to laugh, not unkindly, at how sure I was. But I was sure. I knew exactly who I was and exactly what I was going to do with my one life. If you had told that 22-year-old girl, standing in front of her wall of dreams, that in 16 years she would be sitting on a kitchen floor believing she was nothing, she would not have believed you. She would have laughed in your face. And she would have been right to. Because that girl was never nothing. She just forgot for a while. She let someone make her forget. Then I met David. David was charming and ambitious and full of big dreams. He was studying business. He talked about the future like it was already his, like all he had to do was reach out and take it. I fell in love with him completely. When you are 22 and someone that certain looks at you like you are the most important person in the world, it is a very powerful thing. We married when I was 25, and that was when the choices began. David got a job at a company in another city. A good job with a real future. It was a wonderful opportunity, everyone said, for him. But the city had no good architecture program for me to finish my studies. So we sat at our little kitchen table, and we talked about it, and David held my hands and said, "Just for a few years, let me build my career first. Then it will be your turn. I promise. I'll support your dreams the way you're supporting mine. That's what marriage is." So I gave up my studies. I moved to his city. I told myself it was only for a few years. I got a job to help pay the bills while David climbed. A boring office job, nothing to do with the buildings I loved. But I did it, and I did it well, and every month I handed most of my salary toward our life together, toward his suits and his business dinners, and the nice flat that made him look successful to his bosses. And David climbed. Oh, he climbed. He was good at his job, I will give him that. Year by year, he was promoted. Manager, senior manager, director. And with every step up, our life got a little bigger, a little nicer. And with every step up, my own dreams got a little smaller, a little further away. Next year, David would say, when I gently asked about going back to my studies, "Things are so busy right now. I really need you to hold the house together while I focus on this. You understand, don't you? We're a team. We're a team." I heard that phrase 1,000 times over 16 years, and I believed it. That was the foolish part. I truly believed we were building something together, and that one day, when he was safe and successful, he would turn around and help me build my half of the dream too. I cooked his dinners, I ironed his shirts, I hosted his colleagues and remembered their wives' names and their children's birthdays. I made him look good. I made his life smooth and easy so that he could focus on winning. I was the quiet engine behind his shining success, and I told myself that mattered. I told myself I was building something too. Let me tell you about one evening, because it says everything. It was our 10th anniversary. I had cooked a beautiful dinner, I had lit candles, and earlier that week, in a drawer I rarely opened, I had found my old portfolio. My drawings from university, the buildings I had dreamed up when I was young. I had spent an hour that afternoon just looking at them, and something in my chest had ached, a deep, old ache, and I thought, maybe tonight I will talk to David about going back. Maybe tonight, on our anniversary with the candles lit, he will remember his promise. So over dinner, gently, carefully, I brought it up. I told him I had been looking at my old work. I told him I thought I might be ready to go back and finish my studies. I told him it would mean so much to me. David chewed his food. He did not even look up from his plate. Elena, he said, I'm about to make partner. Do you have any idea how much pressure I'm under right now? The last thing I need is you off at some school, not here, not running the house, adding stress to my life. Can we please not do this tonight, of all nights? And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. I put my portfolio back in the drawer, and I did not take it out again for 8 years. I want you to understand, it was not one big moment where I gave up my life. It was 1,000 small ones, 1,000 dinners where his day mattered and mine did not. 1,000 times I said next year. 1,000 little surrenders, so small that no single one of them felt like the end of anything. And that is how a life gets away from you. Not all at once. One quiet evening at a time. For 16 years, I set my own dreams aside for his, and I never once complained. That was my mistake. Not the loving, the not complaining. The making it all so easy for him that he never once had to notice what it was costing me. Then, when I was 38, I found out about Bella. Bella was 26. She was a junior employee at David's company. Young, bright, ambitious, everything I had once been before I poured all of it into him. And David, my David, the man I had given 16 years and every one of my own dreams to, was having an affair with her. I found out the way people usually do, small things at first. He was working late more and more. He was distracted, secretive with his phone. He bought new clothes, started going to the gym, wore a cologne I did not recognize. And then, one evening, I found the messages. I sat on our kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets, and I read months of them. Months. The sweet words, the plans, the way they laughed together about how busy he was, how tired, how his boring wife at home never suspected anything. His boring wife. That was me. 16 years, and that was what I had become to him. Boring, convenient, furniture that cooked. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I just sat on the floor, in the dark, and felt 16 years of my life crack down the middle. The worst part was not even the affair itself, though that was terrible. The worst part was one message in particular, one I read 3 times to be sure I had understood it. Bella had written, "But what about your wife?" And David had written back, "Elena, don't worry about her. She's not going anywhere. She has nothing without me. She gave up everything years ago. She wouldn't survive on her own for a month. She has nothing without me. She wouldn't survive on her own for a month." I sat with those words for a long time on that cold kitchen floor. And here is the strange thing. In that moment, they felt true. That was the most frightening part. He had taken so much of me, over so many years, that I had come to believe it too. That I was nothing without him. That I could not survive on my own. He had not just betrayed me, he had convinced me that I was helpless. And I had let him. I confronted him that night. And here is the thing I will never forget. He was not sorry. He was relieved. "Honestly, Elena, it's better this way," he said, standing over me, calm and cold. "We both know this marriage has been dead for years. You've become so small, so dull. You cook and you clean and you have nothing to talk about. Bella is exciting. She's going places. She understands the world I live in. You gave up a long time ago. You gave up," he said that to me, the man I had given up everything for. "I gave up my career for you. I said. My voice was shaking. My studies, my dreams. I gave up all of it so you could have yours. No one made you do that, David said with a shrug. That was your choice. That was your choice, as if he had not held my hands at that little kitchen table and promised me it would be my turn, as if he had not said every single year, not yet, I need you to hold the house together. The divorce was ugly. David had money and lawyers, and I had neither, because for 16 years all my money had gone into him. He fought me on everything. In the end, I walked away with almost nothing. A small settlement that would not last long, no house, no career, no savings of my own. At 38 years old, I had to start my entire life over from zero. And Bella? Bella moved into my house before the ink on the divorce papers was even dry. I will never forget the day I came to collect the last of my things. Bella opened the door of my own home, wearing one of the silk robes David had once bought for me, holding a glass of wine at 11 in the morning. She looked me up and down slowly, and she smiled a small, cruel smile. "You must be the ex-wife," she said, as if I were a delivery person. "David's told me all about you, the one who let herself go." She took a sip of her wine. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of him. Not everyone can keep a man like David interested. It takes a certain kind of woman." She glanced at my old clothes, my tired face. No offense. No offense. She stepped aside to let me collect the boxes of my own life from my own home, and she watched me carry them out to my small car, and she did not lift a finger to help. I carried out 4 boxes, 4 cardboard boxes. That was what 16 years of a life came down to. Some books, some clothes, a few photographs I could not yet bear to throw away. My old portfolio, the drawings from when I was 22, which I had rescued from the drawer at the last moment, almost without thinking, the way you grab the one thing you cannot leave behind in a fire. On my last trip to the car, Bella was still standing in the doorway, watching, sipping her wine. And as I passed her, she said one more thing. She said, "You know, Elena, you really should smile more. Maybe if you'd smiled more, he wouldn't have needed me." And she laughed, a light little laugh, and closed the door of my house in my face. I drove away from that house with everything I owned in cardboard boxes. And I pulled over 3 streets later because I could not see the road through my tears. I sat in that little car on the side of the road, and I cried until there was nothing left. And then, when the crying finally stopped, I sat in the silence, empty and hollow, and I looked over at the passenger seat where my old portfolio had slid out of its box. It had fallen open, and there, on the top page, was a drawing I had made half a lifetime ago. A library, full of light, with a great window open to the sky. I stared at it for a long time through my swollen eyes. I did not know it yet, but I was looking at my own future. I just could not see it through the tears. That was the lowest moment of my life. I was 38. I had no husband, no home, no career, no money, and no idea who I even was anymore. I had spent my whole adult life being David's wife, and now I was not even that. I was nothing. That is how I felt. Like nothing. My sister Kate took me in without a single question. She lived in a small flat across town, and she made up the sofa bed for me, and she did not tell me it would all be fine, because she was not a liar, and it did not feel fine. She just let me be broken in her living room for as long as I needed to be. For a few weeks I let myself fall apart. I stayed with my sister. I cried. I slept too much. I felt the full, crushing weight of 16 wasted years. The nights were the worst. I would lie awake on that sofa bed and do the terrible arithmetic of my life. 16 years gone. My youth gone. My studies abandoned. My savings spent on a man who now called me boring. I was 38. Everyone I knew my age had careers, homes, children, lives they had spent 2 decades building. And I had nothing but a car full of cardboard boxes and a name that was not even really mine, because it was his name, David's name, stamped on the wife he had thrown away. I remember thinking, very clearly, one night around 3 in the morning, it is too late for me. Whatever I might have been, that door closed years ago. Women my age do not get to start over. That only happens in films. In real life, you make your bed at 25 and you lie in it forever. And if the bed falls apart, you simply lie in the wreckage. I believed that. For a few weeks, I truly believed my life was, in every way that mattered, already over. I have never been so wrong about anything. And then, one grey morning, something shifted. I was sitting at my sister's kitchen table, staring at nothing, when she put a cup of tea in front of me and sat down and looked at me hard. "Elena," she said, "I'm going to say something, and I need you to hear it. What David did was terrible. But you are not nothing. You were never nothing. Do you remember who you were before him? Do you remember the girl who stayed up all night drawing buildings? The one the professors said had a gift?" She took my hand. "That girl is still in there. She's been asleep for 16 years, but she is not dead, and it is not too late." I looked at her, and for the first time in a very long time, I remembered. I remembered the feeling of a pencil in my hand at 3 in the morning. I remembered the joy of watching a building take shape on paper, line by line. I remembered being good at something, being proud of something that was mine. I had given all of that away. But my sister was right. It was not dead. It was only sleeping. That morning, I made a decision. I was 38 years old, and I was going to start again, not as anyone's wife, not as the woman who held the house together, as myself, as Elena, the girl with the gift. It was not easy. I want to be honest about that. Starting over at 38 with no money and a 16-year gap in your career is not a fairy tale. It is hard, grinding, frightening work. I went back to school. I used the last of my small settlement to finish the architecture qualification I had abandoned all those years ago. I was the oldest person in every class by far, sitting among 20-year-olds, my hands stiff and out of practice. It was humbling. Some nights I cried with exhaustion and doubt. Who did I think I was? A 38-year-old woman, starting from nothing, competing with people half my age. But here is what I discovered. The gift was still there. 16 years of rust could not kill it. The moment I picked up a pencil again, something inside me woke up and sang. I was good. I was better than good. All those years of dreaming, even while I was ironing David's shirts, I had never really stopped seeing buildings in my mind. I remember the first time it happened. I was in a night class, exhausted, doubting everything, and the professor gave us a simple exercise to design a small house on a difficult, sloping piece of land. The young students groaned, but something lit up in me. I did not go home and sleep. I stayed up all night, the way I had at 22, and I drew a house that seemed to grow right out of the hillside, that caught the morning light in a way that would make anyone living there feel, every single day, that the world was beautiful. When I brought it in the next morning, the professor went quiet. He held it up. He looked at me over his glasses. "Who taught you to see like this?" he asked. "No one," I said. "I just always have." "Well," he said, "you've wasted a great deal of time. Whoever you are, don't waste any more. You've wasted a great deal of time." He did not know how right he was, but it was not a cruel thing he said. It was the kindest thing anyone had said to me in years, because it meant the seeing was still there. The gift had waited for me. It had never left. There were nights I wanted to quit. Nights I sat in my sister's flat and thought, I am 40 years old, competing with children, spending money I do not have on a dream that probably will not work. The doubt was enormous, but every time I picked up a pencil, the doubt got quiet. Because when I was drawing, I was not thinking about my age, or my failures, or David, or Bella. I was just doing the thing I was made to do, and a person who has found the thing they are made to do is very, very hard to stop. I remember one night in particular. It was near the end of my final year, and I had a huge project due, and I was exhausted, and I had run out of money, and I got a letter that day saying my small settlement was nearly gone. I sat at the kitchen table and I put my head in my hands, and I thought, I cannot do this. It is too much. I am too old and too tired and too alone, and I am going to fail. And then I will have nothing at all. Not even the small comfort of never having tried. My sister Kate found me like that. She sat down across from me. She did not say anything for a while. Then she said, "Do you remember when we were girls and you used to build houses out of cardboard boxes on the living room floor? Whole cities. You'd spend all day. And Mum would call you for dinner and you wouldn't come because you were building." She smiled. "You were 7. You have been this person your entire life, Elena. David didn't make you an architect, and he couldn't unmake you one. It was always you. It's the truest thing about you. So you are not going to quit now. You are going to finish this project, and I am going to sit right here and make you tea until you do." And she did. She sat with me all night, making tea, saying nothing, just being there, while I finished the project that I had been so sure I could not finish. I handed it in the next morning. It got the highest mark in the year. I have thought about that night many times since, about how close I came to giving up, right at the end, right before everything changed, and about how a person who loves you, who simply refuses to let you believe the lie that you are nothing, can be the difference between the life you were meant for and the one you settle for. Everyone needs one person like that. If you have one, hold on to them, and if you do not, then you must learn, as I eventually did, to become that person for yourself. I graduated at the top of my class. At 40 years old, my sister Kate sat in the audience and cried, and when they read my name, she stood up and cheered so loudly that the whole hall turned to look, and I did not care one bit, because I was not ashamed anymore. I had earned that name. Not David's name, my own. Getting that first job was not easy either. I applied to more than 40 firms. Most did not even reply. The ones that did looked at my age and my 16-year gap and my lack of experience, and they were polite, and they said no. Interview after interview, no after no. There were evenings I came home to my sister's flat and thought, they are right, who would hire a 40-year-old beginner? Maybe it really is too late after all, but I kept going. Because I had learned something on that kitchen floor that I was never going to unlearn, that the moment you decide you are helpless, you become helpless. So I refused to decide it. I applied to the 41st firm. It was a small practice run by a kind, tired man named Mr. Okafor, who looked at my portfolio for a long time in silence, then looked up at me and said, "Your work is better than people half your age who I've hired. Why has no one taken you?" And I told him the truth. I told him about the divorce, and the 16 years, and starting over. And he nodded slowly, and he said, "My wife started over at 45. Best decision she ever made. When can you begin?" I nearly wept in his office. I got a job at a small architecture firm. A junior position, starting at the bottom, working for people 10 years younger than me. My pride did not matter anymore. I was just so grateful to finally be doing the thing I loved. I worked harder than anyone. I came in first and left last. I poured all 16 years of held-back passion into every project they gave me, and people began to notice. My designs were different. They had something. The other architects made buildings that were correct. I made buildings that people fell in love with. Within a year, I was given bigger projects, then bigger ones. A design of mine won a small award, then a bigger one. Clients began to ask for me by name, and then came the day that changed everything. A wealthy developer, a woman named Margaret Cross, saw a building I had designed. She tracked me down, she took me to lunch, and she looked at me across the table and said, "Elena, you have the most exciting eye I've seen in 20 years. I want to build a firm around you. I'll put up the money, you be the vision. Together we'll build something extraordinary." I was 40 years old, and a woman I had just met was offering me the thing I had dreamed of since I was 22, my own firm. I said yes. We called it Aurelia. Margaret handled the money and the business. I handled the design, the vision, the soul of it. The first year was terrifying. We had one small office, 3 employees, and a mountain of bills. There were nights I lay awake certain we would fail, certain I had led Margaret into ruin, certain that a 40-year-old woman with a broken life had no business trying to run a firm. Starting a company is not glamorous. It is fear and numbers and long, long hours. I worked harder in that first year than I had ever worked at anything. And then came the building that changed everything. A community trust wanted to build a library in a poor part of the city. The budget was small, the bigger firms did not want it, there was no money and no glory in it, but I did, because I remembered what it was to feel like nothing, and I wanted to build a place that would make the people in that neighborhood feel like something. I designed a library full of light, with a great window that opened to the sky, with warm wood and quiet corners, and a reading room where a child from anywhere could sit and feel that the whole world of books belonged to them too. When it opened, something happened that I had not expected. People loved it. Not just liked it, loved it. It was photographed and written about. People traveled across the city just to sit in it. A famous critic wrote that it was a building with a soul in a country full of buildings with none. And at the bottom of the article, he printed my name, Elena Hart. After that, the phone did not stop ringing. Aurelia grew faster than anyone expected. My buildings started going up around the city. Beautiful, bold, human buildings that made people stop on the street and look up. We won contracts, we won awards, we hired staff, good people, kind people. Within 3 years, Aurelia was one of the most talked about young firms in the country, and my name, Elena, my own name, not David's, was on the door. I had done it. Alone. From the kitchen floor to the corner office. From nothing to something entirely my own. I was happier than I had ever been in my life. Not because of the money, though the money was nice after so many hard years. I was happy because every single day I got to do the thing I loved. The thing I was born to do. The thing I had given away and fought to get back. I was happy because I had rebuilt myself, brick by brick, into the woman I was always meant to be. I did not think about David and Bella very much anymore. I had no room for them. My life was too full. Once in a while I would hear something, through old mutual friends, that David had not been doing so well at his company, that his star had faded. That the great David Vance, once so certain the world was his, had been passed over for promotions, had made some bad decisions, had become bitter and difficult, and that he and Bella fought all the time now. That the exciting young woman was not so exciting once the shine wore off and the bank account got smaller. The full story, which I pieced together slowly over the years, was almost too neat, as if life had written it on purpose. After the divorce, David had been so sure of himself, so certain that Bella and his rising career were all he needed. But a man who will betray his wife of 16 years is not, it turns out, a man other people trust for very long. His colleagues saw what he was. The promotion he had thrown our marriage away for never came. A younger man got it instead. David grew bitter, and bitterness is poison in a career. He made bad decisions. He blamed everyone but himself. And slowly, over a few years, the shining David Vance, so certain the world was his, watched the world quietly close its doors to him, one after another. And Bella, the exciting young woman who understood his world, she had fallen for a powerful, successful man. She had not signed up for a bitter, failing one. When the money and the status faded, so did she. They fought. They grew cold. And eventually I heard. She left him too, the way he had once left me, and went looking for the next bigger life to attach herself to. Everything he had thrown me away for, he lost. Not because I did anything. I did nothing at all. He simply became what he had always been, once there was no one left to hold his house together and make him look better than he was. I felt nothing much when I heard these things. Not joy, not sorrow. They belonged to an old life that was no longer mine. I had moved on. I had become someone new. And then, one ordinary Tuesday, my assistant put a stack of job applications on my desk. Aurelia was growing, and we were hiring for a mid-level administrative role. My assistant had shortlisted the best applicants for me to review because I like to have the final say on everyone we brought into my company. Culture matters. I had built Aurelia to be everything David's cold, cutthroat world was not. Kind, fair. A place where good people could grow. I flipped through the applications, one by one, and then I stopped, because there, on the fourth page, was a name I knew. Bella. I sat very still for a long moment. I read it 3 times to be sure. But there was no mistake. It was her full name, her age, now 34, and her work history, which told a story all by itself. She had left David's company 2 years ago, or been let go. It was not clear. Since then she had bounced from job to job, never staying long, never rising, and now she was applying for a mid-level administrative position at Aurelia. My company. She did not know it was mine. Of course she did not. Why would she connect the glamorous, award-winning firm Aurelia, run by a celebrated architect named Elena, with the boring, discarded ex-wife she had once looked up and down on a doorstep? In her mind, I was still the woman on the kitchen floor. The one who let herself go. The one who could not keep a man like David interested. She had no idea that the woman she was so desperately hoping would give her a job was me. I looked at her application for a long, long time, and I felt something complicated move through me. Not triumph exactly. Something quieter and deeper than that. That night, I did not sleep well. I lay awake and I thought about her. I thought about the woman in the silk robe at my door, so cruel, so sure of herself. And I thought about the woman on this application, 34 now, unemployed, bouncing from job to job, applying for a role far beneath what she must once have imagined for herself. Life had already punished her far more thoroughly than I ever could. What would be the point of adding to it? And I asked myself a hard question, lying there in the dark. What did I actually want? Did I want to hurt her? To watch her face when she realized who I was? To enjoy her fear? To send her away crushed? I searched myself honestly, and I found that no, I did not want that. Not really. The desire for that kind of revenge had died somewhere in those years of building without my even noticing it go. What I wanted, I realized, was something stranger and harder to name. I wanted to close the circle. I wanted to stand in the doorway she had once stood in and find out what kind of woman I would be, now that I was the one with all the power. Because power reveals people. Anyone can be decent when they have nothing. The real test of a person is what they do when they finally have everything, and the one who wronged them is standing helpless in front of them. I wanted to know what I would do. I wanted to know who I had become. I could have thrown her application in the bin. No one would ever have known. I could have made sure she never set foot in my building. That would have been easy, but I did not do that because I was curious, and because I think some part of me needed to close this circle. Some part of me needed to stand, finally, on the other side of that doorway. So I told my assistant to invite Bella in for an interview. And that is how I came to be sitting behind my big desk in my corner office on a bright Tuesday morning, waiting for the woman who had helped destroy my old life to walk in and ask me for a job. At 10 o'clock exactly, there was a knock at my door. "Come in," I said. The door opened and Bella walked in. She was older than I remembered, of course. 8 years older. The glow of the smug young woman in the silk robe was gone. She looked tired. She looked worn down by life, by disappointment, by choices that had not worked out the way she had been so sure they would. She was wearing a suit that was a little out of date, and she was holding her resume in both hands, and she had the slightly desperate, overbright smile of someone who badly needs a job to say yes. I had thought, in the days before, about how I would feel in this moment, I had imagined I might feel powerful, triumphant. I had imagined I might enjoy it, the way you enjoy the ending of a film where the villain finally gets what they deserve. I had earned that, hadn't I? After everything. But sitting there, watching the door open, I felt none of those things. I felt calm. And underneath the calm, to my own surprise, I felt a kind of sadness, because I remembered being the one who needed the job. I remembered what it was to walk into a room holding your whole future in your shaking hands, hoping a stranger would be kind. She walked toward my desk with her hand out, her eyes down at her papers, rehearsing her opening line. "Good morning. Thank you so much for seeing me. I'm very excited about the opportunity to—" And then she looked up, and she saw my face. She stopped. Right in the middle of the room, her hand froze in the air, the color drained from her face, the bright smile fell away completely. "Elena?" she whispered. "Hello, Bella," I said calmly. "Please, sit down." She did not sit down. She stood there, staring at me, her eyes moving from my face, to the big office, to the view of the city behind me, to the name on the wall. Aurelia. Understanding was crashing over her in waves, and I watched it happen. "You," she said. "This is your Elena Vance?" "Elena Hart now," I said. I took my own name back. "But yes, this is my firm. I founded it. Everything you're standing in, I built." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Please, sit. We have an interview to conduct, don't we?" Slowly, in a kind of daze, she sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. And I looked at her, this woman who had once been so cruel to me, who had worn my robe and drunk wine at 11 in the morning in my home and told me I had let myself go, and I waited to feel the anger I had carried for so long. But it did not come. Something else came instead, something that surprised me. I felt sorry for her, because I could see her whole life written on her tired face. She had bet everything on David. She had believed, the way I once had, that a charming, ambitious man was a ticket to a bigger life. She had stepped on another woman to get to him. And it had all turned to ashes. David's career had faded. Their love had curdled. She was 34, alone now, I suspected, bouncing from job to job, and here she was, begging for a mid-level position from the very woman she had helped throw away. Life has a strange way of balancing its books, not always and not quickly, but sometimes, if you live long enough, you get to watch the scales settle. And when you do, it is never quite what you imagined. I had spent a few bitter nights, years ago, dreaming of a moment exactly like this one. A moment where Bella would be brought low and I would be raised high. And now that it had actually arrived, it did not taste like victory at all. It tasted like something quieter, like understanding, like the closing of a very long chapter. Because I looked at her and I did not see a villain anymore. I saw a woman who had made the same mistake I had made, only worse. We had both believed the same lie, that our worth was something a man could give us, and therefore something a man could take away. She had just believed it more completely than I had, and it had cost her more. I thought about the two of us, sitting there in that office. 8 years ago, she had been the winner, and I had been the loser. She had my husband, my house, my life. She had stood in my doorway in my robe and told me I was nothing. And now, here we were, and the whole world had turned upside down. And I was the one behind the desk, and she was the one hoping to be shown mercy. If you had told either of us, 8 years ago, that it would end like this, neither of us would have believed you. She thought she had won something permanent. I thought I had lost something permanent. We were both wrong. Nothing is permanent. Not the winning, and not the losing. The only thing that lasts is what you build inside yourself. And she had built her whole life on a man, the way I once had. So when the man collapsed, so did she. Whereas I had been forced, painfully, to build my life on myself. And a life built on yourself does not collapse. It only grows. I don't know what to say, Bella finally managed. Her voice was small, nothing like the cold, cruel voice from the doorway. I didn't know. When I applied, I had no idea it was you. I never would have. She stopped. She looked down at her hands. I suppose you're going to tell me to get out. And I suppose I deserve it. I studied her for a long moment. Tell me something, Bella, I said. That day, at the door of my house, when you told me I had let myself go, when you said it takes a certain kind of woman to keep a man like David interested, do you remember that? She closed her eyes. Yes, she whispered. I remember. Why did you say it? I asked. Not angrily. I genuinely wanted to know. You had already won. You had him. You had my house. Why be cruel to a woman who was already broken? Bella was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was thick. Because I was frightened, she said. Because deep down, even then, I knew what I was. I knew I had done a terrible thing. And it was easier to be cruel to you than to feel it. If I could make you small, make you nothing, then I didn't have to feel like a bad person for what I'd done. A tear ran down her cheek. It was the ugliest thing I ever did. And I have thought about it. That look on your face, more times than you could ever know. I'm not asking you to believe that, but it's true. I sat back in my chair. Outside my window, the city stretched out, full of buildings, some of them mine. I thought about the woman I had been on that kitchen floor, and I thought about the woman I was now, sitting in this office, holding this other woman's whole future in my hands. And I understood, in that moment, that this was the real test. Not whether I could build a company. I had already proven I could do that. The real test was who I had become. What kind of woman was I now, with all this power? The kind who crushes the person who hurt her because she can, or something better. I'm not going to give you this job, Bella, I said. She nodded quickly, wiping her eyes. No, of course, I understand. She started to gather her papers to leave. I'm not going to give you this job, I continued, because it's beneath you. A mid-level administrative role, filing papers, answering phones. You're smarter than that. You always were. That was never your problem. I paused. Your problem was the same as mine once. You thought your worth had to come from a man. You thought the way to a bigger life was to attach yourself to someone else's ambition instead of building your own. I made that mistake for 16 years. You made it too, and look where it left both of us. Bella stared at me, confused, not understanding where this was going. There's a junior design assistant role opening up next month, I said. It's hard work, it pays less than you probably want to start, and you'd be learning something completely new, from the bottom, surrounded by people younger than you, which I promise you is humbling beyond words. But it's real. It's a skill that would be yours. Something no man could ever take away from you in a divorce. I looked at her steadily. If you want to actually build something of your own, for once in your life, instead of standing next to someone else's, then apply for that one. And I'll consider you fairly. Same as anyone. Bella's mouth had fallen open. Why? She breathed. Why would you do that? After everything I did to you, why would you help me? And this was the part that I had not fully understood myself until I heard myself say it out loud. Because 8 years ago, I said quietly, a woman told me I was nothing, that I had let myself go, that I wasn't a certain kind of woman, and I believed her for a little while. It nearly destroyed me. I leaned forward, and then I found out she was wrong. I was never nothing. I just hadn't started yet. So I'm not going to stand here, in the life I built out of that ruin, and tell another woman she's nothing. Even you. Especially you. Because I know now that it isn't true about anyone. It's the cruelest lie there is. And I won't tell it. Bella put her face in her hands and wept. Not the delicate tears of before, real ones, the kind that come when something hard and frozen inside a person finally breaks. I'm so sorry, she said over and over. I'm so sorry, Elena, for all of it. I'm so sorry. I know, I said. And the strange thing was, I did know. And in that moment, something I had been carrying for 8 years, a heavy, cold stone of anger I had not even realized I was still holding, quietly set itself down. I forgave her, not for her sake, for mine, because I did not want to carry that stone anymore. It had no place in the life I had built. Bella did apply for the junior design role. And she got it, fairly, on her own merit, because underneath all that old cruelty, there really was a sharp and capable mind. She started at the bottom, and she worked, and slowly, over the following years, she built something that was actually hers. She is still at Aurelia today. She is good at her job. We are not friends exactly. Too much happened for that. But there is a strange, quiet respect between us. Two women who both learned the hardest way that you must never, ever hand your whole self over to someone else and call it love. I will tell you the truth about why I really did it. People who hear this story sometimes think I was being a saint, forgiving her, hiring her. I was not. I was being selfish, in the best possible way, because I had learned that carrying hatred is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to fall ill. It does nothing to them. It only rots you. I did not forgive Bella to set her free. I forgave her to set myself free. There is a difference, and it is everything. And I will tell you something else I learned. The version of me that David threw away could never have done what I did in that office. She would have crushed Bella because she was small and frightened and full of pain and hurt people. But I was not that woman anymore. I had built more than a company in those years. I had built a self so solid, so sure of its own worth, that another person's cruelty simply could not reach it. That is the real wealth, not the office, not the awards. The unshakable knowledge of what you are worth. Once you have that, no one can ever put you on a kitchen floor again. And David? David heard eventually that his ex-wife was the celebrated Elena Hart, founder of Aurelia. I know he heard because about a year after Bella came to work for me, David himself contacted my office. He wanted to meet, for lunch. To reconnect, his message said. To catch up on old times. I knew what it really was, of course. His own career had collapsed. He was in his 50s now, out of work, his money gone, his young mistress long departed. And here was his old wife, the boring one, the one who had let herself go, suddenly wealthy and successful and powerful. He was not reaching out to reconnect. He was reaching out to see what he could get. I remembered the man who had stood over me on the kitchen floor and told me I had become small and dull and that I had given up. I remembered him saying, "That was your choice," about the dreams I had sacrificed for him. I had my assistant send him a short, polite reply. "Miss Hart thanks you for your message, but her schedule is full. She wishes you well." That was all. I did not need to say more. I did not need revenge. Not the ugly kind. The kind that eats you from the inside. My whole life was my revenge. Every building with my name on it. Every morning I woke up excited to work. Every young woman I hired and mentored and told, "You are not nothing. You are just getting started." That was the only answer David deserved. To see from a distance exactly what he had thrown away, and to know that I did not need him, or hate him, or think about him at all. The best revenge, it turns out, is not making them suffer. It is becoming so completely, so magnificently yourself that they simply no longer matter. These days, I do something at Aurelia that means more to me than any award or any building. Every year, I hire young women who are starting over. Women in their 40s and 50s who gave up their dreams for a marriage, for children, for someone else's ambition, and who found themselves, one grey morning, sitting among the wreckage, believing it was too late. I find them. I hire them. I train them. And on their first day, I take each one aside, and I tell them the same thing. I tell them, "I know exactly where you have been. I have sat on that floor. I know the voice in your head that says it is too late, that you are too old, that whatever you might have been, that door has closed. I am here to tell you that the voice is lying. It is the cruelest lie there is. You are not too late. You are not too old. You are not nothing. You are a woman who is about to find out what she is truly made of. And I promise you, it is more than you can imagine. I watch their faces when I say it. I watch the same thing wake up in them that woke up in me all those years ago at my sister's kitchen table. And I think, this is what it was all for. Not the pain. The pain was just the price. This is what I bought with it. Some of those women have gone on to design buildings of their own now. One of them recently won an award I lost years ago, and I stood in the audience and cheered so loudly the whole hall turned to look, and I did not care one bit. Because that is the other secret nobody tells you. The joy you give away comes back multiplied. The woman who was once told she was nothing now spends her days telling other women that they are everything, and there is no revenge, no wealth, no triumph on this earth that could ever feel as good as that. Sometimes, late in the evening, when everyone else has gone home, I stand at the window of my corner office and look out at the city, at the lights, at the buildings, some of them mine, rising up against the dark sky. And I think about the woman who sat on a kitchen floor 8 years ago with everything she owned in cardboard boxes, believing she was nothing. I wish I could reach back through time and take her hand. I wish I could tell her what I know now. You are not nothing. You never were. You have not been thrown away. You have been set free. The man who left you did you the greatest favor of your life, though it will take you years to understand it. He handed you back to yourself. He forced you to become the woman you were always meant to be, the woman you had buried under 16 years of holding someone else's house together. Get up off the floor, my darling, wipe your eyes, pick up your pencil. Your life is not over. Your life is finally about to begin. He left me for his mistress, and she came to work for me. But that was never really the story. That was just the moment the world caught up to a truth I had already learned on my own, in the hardest years of my life. The real story is simpler than that. The real story is this. A woman was told she was nothing, and she believed it, and it nearly killed her. And then she got up, and she built a life so beautiful, and so entirely her own, that the lie could never touch her again. That is a story that belongs to me. And no one, no husband, no mistress, no cruel word spoken in a doorway can ever take it away. Because I built it myself, brick by brick, from the floor up, and it is mine.